What's going on, folks? Episode 42 starts in 30 seconds. What's up, everybody? We last couple of weeks off. Did not record the last couple of weeks. The last episode we did was episode 41. Troy Froman, known as Ox from Saved by the Bell. Check out that episode. And before that was part 1 and part 2, episodes 39 and episode 40, with former pro wrestler Hector Guerrero. You want to check out those two interviews with Hector Guerrero, part 1 and part 2. Very emotional. Lots of stories. Talking about his dad, Gory Guerrero, and talking about the passing of his brother. Uh, you know Eddie Guerrero when he passed away in 2005. That was very emotional. I got emotional as well. But Hector Guerrero, very nice guy, great guy. But my next guest, man, this guy started wrestling in 1982. I was just a kid, and I can't wait to get stories from this guy, Rudy Boy Gonzalez. What's up, brother?
How you doing? How have you been out there?
Good, man. Good. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy. I see you active, and so again, I appreciate you taking the time and joining me.
Not a problem at all. I enjoy doing stuff like this.
Great. Yeah, I've seen interviews by you on YouTube, and I love the storytelling. Uh, Wrestlers are great storytellers, and I love hearing history about wrestling. I've been a wrestling fan since I was a little kid. But Rudy, before we get into any of that, tell me about your background, man. Where are you from? Where did you grow up, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm from San Antonio. I grew up. I was raised here. I still live here. This is home. Um, I didn't get into the wrestling business till I was 18. My dad used to watch wrestling on TV down here with Southwest Championship Wrestling and Joe Blanchard and Tully Blanchard and those guys, but I never really watched it. I mean, looking back though, and talking to to some of the kids now, man, I missed out on an opportunity because my dad would ask me if I would watch wrestling with him, and I just said no. It just didn't appeal to me. And some of the memories that guys share with me is spending Saturday nights or Friday nights watching the local wrestling, show with their dad. And I don't know, man. I just wasn't into wrestling when I was younger. I was into football, and so down here, like the big football stars were a guy named Tommy Kramer, who ended up playing for the Minnesota Vikings, and his arch rival was none other than Tully Blanchard. And so Tully actually caught my attention because he went on to state championships and stuff like that, uh, and he went to West Texas State University, and he's a big shot quarterback. And my dad had taken me when I was younger to a wrestling show, and it was ran by his dad, Joe Blanchard, and Tully was the referee. And so my high school football coach referred me to go train with the Blanchards at their place. They're starting a wrestling school, and he told me, he goes, "I'm not telling you to be a pro wrestler. I'm telling you to go train with those guys, and to help you out." And some of the guys that were training there was Ivan Putski and a guy named Leo Seitz. They played semi-pro football for my high school coach. He coached a semi-pro team called the San Antonio Toros, which my dad took me several times, and we went to go see them play. Um, Another player that was on that team was a guy named Frank. Frank. I don't know why his name's slipped my mind, but he later turned out to be Bruiser Brody.
Frank Goodish.
Um, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Frank Goodish. He later turned out to be Bruiser Brody. Another guy was a running
Wow.
back, a running back named Joe Benarski, and he turned into Ivan Putski. So when I made the connection and stuff, um, I started getting intrigued. Like, how did these football players get into pro wrestling? And then one day I went to go train there. I was supposed to go back to college, um, for the, I guess, spring semester. And to help me out with money, Joe asked me if I could help out with the ring one day, and I did. And so back then, you helped with the ring, and then you had like a side job, like count tickets or count T-shirts or count money or watch the back door as security. And since nobody really knew me, nobody really trusted me, I guess they had me watch security at the back door. And so from where I was sitting at, I could watch the matches, and I saw guys like Tiger Conway Jr. and Larry Lane and Bob Sweetan and some of these guys. And the main event was Tully Blanchard and Wahoo McDaniel.
Wow.
And yeah, and when people ask me what turned me on to wrestling, I immediately bring that up, because I mean, everybody else, looking back, everybody else had great matches, yes, but Tully and Wahoo, man, I mean, just with your reaction says it all. I mean, they were brutal. And so, I'm 18 years old. I grew up all my life thinking wrestling is whatever, and I'm watching these two grown men just beat the heck out of each other, and I'm thinking to myself, if this is not real, then what are these guys doing? And and so I did that show. I did two more shows. That was a Thursday. I did the Friday and Saturday show they had, and I started paying attention to all the matches. And long story short, man, I never went back to school. I decided I was going to take a shot at this, and I'm still taking a shot. 42 years later, I'm still taking a shot at this.
So you're still very well active in the ring, right?
I can't. You know what? I thought about this. Somebody brought this up not too long ago, but I feel like if um, if there was nothing else, what else would I be doing? What else what else would I be doing? And someone brought this up, like, um, uh, Alpha passed away and Sika passed away, and they were already up there in years, man. They were older, but I mean, I've seen some video of Alpha, especially. Um, and I mean, he was still, even though he's older, he still looked like he could beat the heck out of somebody. But at some point, you realize I'm done already. I'm finished. And you know, they both, I think Alpha just closed the school not too long ago, and then he got sick, and then Sega passed away. His brother passed away, and then he passed away. And I feel like there was nothing left for those guys to do. And I'm not knocking them in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. I have a ton of respect for the Samoan family and all those guys. And, but what else was there for him to do? What else, what was it? What else was there? And so me, I'm older, you know, um, and I don't want to be in that position where I'm sitting there saying, what else is there? I don't want to be that person. I don't want to wake up the next, tomorrow and say there's nothing for me to do. I'm just going to sit around and wait. Wait for what? So
Yeah.
yeah, I stay active. Like, we just got through with training right now. Um, and I, if there was nothing else for me to do, I mean, what would I be doing right now but sitting home watching, what's today, Tuesday? I'd be watching NXT and critiquing matches to myself because nobody would listen to me. So I don't have a big group of guys, and that's on purpose. But I feel like I still have something to offer the wrestling business. Maybe not wrestling wise, but you know, uh, whatever I picked up along the way, knowledge wise, experience. I feel like I still have a lot to share, and so I'm still around. I enjoy what I do. I'm smart enough to realize that you can't wrestle forever, so I'm good with not being able to do shows. I'm good with sitting in the stands and watching, and enjoying the matches.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Now,
good.
question: do you have a family though?
Oh yeah, I've got I've got two families. I have my kids from a previous relationship. I have two girls and a son, and then I have my daughter Ivy and Micah, my wife. She wrestles, and
Really?
yeah, but you don't
Cool.
know, man. You need to read my stuff. I'm always putting her stuff over. She's one of the WoW girls.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I get WoW on Pluto.
Okay.
I just haven't had time to really watch. And I did not know that was your wife though.
Yeah.
Um,
Lucky for me. you know.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we just got back. She's been with WoW for a couple of years, and I think 2 years was July, and so she goes out there and does her thing, and so I stay home, you know, and I'm cool with that. Like I said, but this time she was gone. They did a series of tapings, so she was gone for months. So this past weekend we went up there. Me and my daughter, we drove from San Antonio to Los Angeles, which is 19 hours.
Whoa,
And yeah, and we watched the tapings on Friday and Saturday night. And when we talked in the beginning, we were going to do a Friday interview, but I figured I would have some time to, sit and talk with you and stuff. But it was just, driving around everywhere and dealing with the traffic and stuff. So I got caught up and weren't able to do it. But yeah, she's been with Val for 2 years and she's doing really, really good.
nice man. That's awesome. That's awesome. And um one of my questions was going to be who were your influences? Obviously, it was Tully Blanchard and Joe Blanchard, and obviously Wahoo McDaniel was obviously.
So
Uh,
yeah, so I always credit my influences to the guys that actually like pulled me to the side and said something, slow down, work harder, get more into something. And so that list, that name, that list of names is like long and prestigious. So I mean, I can start with Gino Hernandez,
oh wow,
Scott Casey, Eric Embry, Luke Williams, one of the sheep herders, Butch Miller, Jonathan Boyd. They were all the sheep herders. I mean, there's a long list of guys. Larry Lane, Tom Jones. I mean, every one of those guys took. And this was a time when uh, it was basically every man for himself. So if someone gave you some kind of tip or advice, the mind thought the thought process was if they're saying something, that means they care. If they don't say anything, you're in trouble. So even if a guy said, "Hey, kid, tuck your shoelaces in," something you may think that's pretty dumb, but no, they're just trying to help you out. So I had a lot of guys that were my influences. And even today, when I do my training, I'll always share a story from, back in the day. And I look at the guys I'm talking, and some are like roll their eyes, like, what does this have to do with us? But it has everything to do with them because the wrestling business is a big circle, and whatever we did back then, it's the old ways are starting to come around again. And it's slowly but surely they are. And they're just stories that you can learn from. Um, so and I use those to try and help the guys out.
and I was going to ask you, I was just going to ask you because you said that some of the guys do roll their eyes when you tell them. I'm assuming some of the guys nowadays because times have changed. Times have changed, and the younger folks, the younger generation, is not like back in the day. Uh, do you find it that more? more younger guys are willing to not listen to the older folks and do their own thing, or do they listen to more often than not? They do listen to you.
They're young guys. So, I mean, when I was younger, even though I had no idea about the wrestling business, there was a time when I didn't really, you know, pay attention like I should have because I was young. I think Bob. There was a guy named Bill Howard, and he said, "Young, dumb, full of cum." And it's like, what does that mean? But now I look back and like, yep, that was me. Um, and guys, I mean, that's just how guys are. I mean, you're young, you don't know, you think you know, you really don't know until one day. And the guys would tell me, man, one day I'm telling you this right now, but one day a light bulb's gonna go in your head and you say, oh, that's what he means. And yes, that happened to me. And it happens to me several times. And I get calls and I get messages from guys. Hey, Rudy, remember that time you talked about yada yada yada? Yes. Yeah, now I know what you mean. And I'm like, that's funny because I did the same thing.
I think that's with everything, not just wrestling. I think that's with any walks of life. It doesn't matter what it is. I think most us guys, we want to do our own thing, and I know better.
Exactly, exactly. Like I say this, like my dad used to tell me, and my dad passed away in 2002, and my dad used to tell me, one day I'm gonna be gone and you're gonna miss me. Because me and my dad we weren't very close. Um my dad did his, he was a dad, he was a father, he took care of us and provided for us, but we weren't like, like the example of watching wrestling at night, that we weren't father and son close. And every now and then he would tell me, one day I'm going to be gone. And I was and me being, 12, 15, 16, 18 years old, thinking for whatever reason my dad's going to be here forever. And he's not. And so, now I look back and I tell the kids sometimes, the guys, one day I'm gonna be gone, and I will be, and whatever information or whatever I've passed on to them, I hope they keep it.
And they will remember. Yeah, s- just like I remember some. My dad passed away last year, and I hadn't spoken to him in 17 years.
Right,
Uh, eh, it's a story for another time. But I do remember. I do have memories.
right.
I remember watching wrestling with him, but I used to make him watch it, and he used to root for the bad guys. He loved King Kong Bundy. He loved Andre the Giant when he turned bad. Uh, he loved Big John Studd. He loved Don Morocco, but Don Morocco when he was heel, he loved the Heenan family.
You
My
grew up on the
dad,
Northeast.
I was born and raised in South Florida,
Okay,
but we watched WWF a lot.
right,
But I remember Sundays when all the wrestling shows used to come on back to back to back to back.
right.
The Florida wrestling, Georgia wrestling, AWA,
All
and the
American Wrestling.
yeah, all those shows used to come out one after the other, and I used to watch every episode, every single. Doesn't matter what it was. I used to like wrestling so much. I used to watch the luchadors from Mexico wrestle. My dad
Right,
would not watch only. He will only watch WWF. He didn't watch NWA, and I fell in love with Sting when Sting came out. I that became my favorite wrestler as a kid.
right.
Um, but let's keep talking about you. Who? So when was your last wrestling match? When was your last match?
My last match. It was I'm sorry. It was a
No,
few
you're good.
months ago.
Okay.
Just a few months ago. I try and not. I'm already, 61 years old.
But you look great though. You look like you're in great shape.
But well, I mean, I attribute that to. I mean, I've never been a bodybuilder type guy. I tell my guys this all the time. I've never been a bodybuilder type of guy, but I've always been able to go and to work with guys and whatever. And so when I was doing Sean school, part of the process was once you got to where you were able to start doing wrestling shows, you had to work with me first. You had to wrestle with me first, and then I would make that determination. So, like, I had Brian Danielson's first match, I had Brian Kendrick's first match, I had Paul London. Well, he started somewhere else, but when he came with us, the first match he had with through us was with me. I mean, and so I still try and because it's one thing for a guy to tell you something, it's a whole different thing for that guy to demonstrate whatever it is he's trying to get across to you. And it's a whole different ball game when you're doing it in a match. So I can tell you, hey man, you gotta, grab the guy tighter by the head, in a headlock, gotta grab him tighter by the head. And then and then when you're in a match, you gotta grab tighter by the head and you gotta have facial expression, you gotta have body language. And so guys are like, okay, so what exactly what, and then when they see me doing this stuff that I'm preaching in a match, then that's when they come back with, oh, now I know what you mean. So I feel like, I mean, I'm training guys. I feel like part of the training is getting in the ring with me and doing stuff, you know, um, and trying to pass on that knowledge. And when I was doing Sean school, one of the things that we always talked about was we would never ask guys to do stuff that we wouldn't do ourselves.
Right.
And so, I'll tell guys, I'll walk them through matches and jump on them about whatever and correct them and do whatever. And then, just to prove a point, I'll have a match with whoever and see, this is what I'm talking about, and they get it.
And now, what was your what's been your favorite opponents? What's your favorite who have been your favorite guy to work with that you've ever wrestled with, that you've ever wrestled against? Who's been your favorite guy to work with?
In my younger days, um, I worked with Eric Embry a couple of times. That was really good. I did a few matches with Ken Timms. He was really good. I learned a lot from him. And then as time went on, I got to work with Larry Zabisco for an NWA show a couple of times,
Oh,
and that was like a clinic. That was, I mean, we didn't, we compared to what guys do now, we did very little, and we had the fans eating out of our hands. Well, we didn't. Larry had the fans eating out of his hands. All I did was listen. And then I got to work with Buddy Roberts, one of the Freebirds, and that was
wow,
another, yeah, that was another treat, man. It was, I mean, that Buddy Roberts was great. I got to work with him twice.
bro,
I
you're
worked,
giving me goosebumps with the names you're dropping.
I I got to
You-
work with a guy named Black Bart
Oh
once.
man,
Yeah, I mean, and these are
I
guys.
remember.
Like I said, I wasn't a wrestling fan when I was younger, but as I got into the wrestling business, I started hearing about guys, and so I figured to kind of help me out, I would go to the grocery store or whatever and look up the magazines, and so I'd see these guys, and I never got to wrestle with Dusty Rhodes, but
Oh,
I did an NWA show where he was, I guess, the booker or whatever, one of the agents, and it was a local show. It was here in Temple, Texas, and it was me and another guy, and Dusty said, "You guys are the opening match. Go out there and work your tails off." And so we said, "Okay," and that's what we did. We went out there and did a 10-minute match, and we came to the back, and Dusty was right there at the curtain, and he was like, "Man, you boys, you guys," and he just went off and put it. I wish my crew worked as hard as that. Was a heck of a match. You guys set the tone, and I mean, he just went off, and me and this guy went to the side, and we were on cloud nine, man, because the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, was putting us over the way he did. And then later on, I got to do a tag match. Me and another luchador guy did a match for WCW in Phoenix with Eddie Guerrero and another luchador match, another luchador guy. And Eddie was so I worked with Eddie Guerrero twice, and both matches were smooth. Just and here's the funny thing is, um, you know, we never called nothing in the back. We just said, how long you want us to go? Go 8 minutes. Okay. Put this guy over. Put Eddie over. Put Rudy, whatever. Okay. And there we go. And it was just we did a pay-per-view match in Phoenix, Arizona, prior to Wrestle War 91 or something like
Oh
that.
wow.
And yeah, and packed house. It was a pay-per-view. We weren't on the pay-per-view, but we were like the dark match. And we went to the back. We did a lucha match. That's what they wanted, was a lucha type match, because there was a hoping to draw a large Hispanic audience. And some of the guys just shit on the match. They just didn't like it. One, I think Brian Pillman. We came to the back, and Brian Pillman was like, "What the fuck was that?" That type of stuff. Other guys like Mike Graham was like, "That was great, guys. Good job. You guys worked hard." Dusty, of course, man, that was beautiful, brother. Stuff like that. Um, and then fast forward the matches I've done with my own students, and it's me feeling, experiencing what I bring to the table. And the guys I take my experience of working with all the guys that I've worked with in the past, the guys, the Razor Ramones, the Mounties, the Martells, the HPKs, all those guys I've worked with, the Buddy Roberts, the Black Barts, all those guys, and I compared them to the guys that I'm working with, like Brian Danielson or Brian Kendrick or Max Castellano, or any of the guys, any student that I've trained. And I'm honest with them and myself. If the match wasn't what it should be, I'll tell them. But fortunately, and it's not me putting myself over. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
That those, I'm a I'm a decent trainer because all those guys have done well. I mean, look at Brian Danielson. Um, he just main evented a match in London this past weekend. Uh, so I mean, I all the matches I've ever had with any of my students are always right there. I mean, I enjoy. That's like me wrestling me, or me wrestling a guy with the same mentality as me, and they all, not all are great matches, but I mean, I know where the boys are coming from, and I enjoy those matches.
Yeah, I mean, even the greatest wrestlers of all time, the Hall of Famers, blah blah. They're not always going to put good matches.
Oh no,
One of my
exactly,
favorite, like I said, my favorite wrestler of all time. I became a huge fan of Sting. Not all his matches were good to watch.
right,
Some were tough to watch. The Hogan match, for example, that was a tough match to watch.
right.
Uh, Whether it was because of Hogan, because of him, whatever the reason was. Let's go back to WCW when you were wrestling. What was that like? Working for WCW, wrestling for WCW.
Sure.
Well,
So what happened was Tully was working for WCW. He was a horseman, I believe,
hmm
and so he was able to get his dad, Joe Blanchard, position in the company. And Joe Blanchard's job was, he was a event coordinator, and what he did was, let's say WCW had a show coming up in October in Phoenix. So Joe would set up all the radio ads, the TV spots, the newspapers, and all that stuff. Um, get sponsors or whatever. He'd do all the leg. He'd fly over to do all the leg work, and then the day of the show, he would take. He had a ring here. He had a WCW ring here. He would take the ring and then have it set up. And so this is like early '90s. So at this time, Joe is up there in years already. I'm not sure, like maybe 70. I don't know. He's older, and so it was difficult for him to put the ring up. So somebody made a suggestion. Joe, you need help, and so find somebody to help you with the ring. And so through the relationship that I had built with the Blanchards from working with them all those years, and back in the early '80s, Joe calls me up and he says, "Are you busy?" This is like maybe a Monday. "Are you busy next Saturday?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "You want to take a drive to Tahlequah, New Mexico, or Tahlequah, Oklahoma?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What are we gonna do?" He goes, "We're gonna set the ring up for WCW." He goes, "I'll get you. You're gonna get paid per diem. You're gonna get paid this much to set the ring up. You're gonna get paid driving back, and And I said, "Sure." I would have done it for free, just because it was Joe Blanchard. So I said, "Sure." So we drive to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. set up the ring, do the show, come back. So the show was a Saturday. We left Thursday, and it was only like a 1 day drive. I mean, it wasn't very far, but we left Thursday, got there Friday afternoon or whatever. I was paid for Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday travel, and then I got paid for putting up the ring Saturday. And my check was like, I don't know, like $800, something crazy. Just
Wow.
yeah, I mean, which was good money. Well, for me, it was good. I'm not a greedy guy, so $700-800. I was like, holy shit. And so we came back. Joe Blanchard said, I need help with the ring. He said, if you don't mind, you know, if you're able to. I said, hey, I'm there. So I that's how I got to work for WCW. Then later on, Kevin Sullivan came in as an agent, and so he sees me show up. We're at the Showboat in Las Vegas, I believe. And he said, hey, man, I knew Kevin Sullivan from when he worked for Joe Blanchard back in the early 80s. And so Kevin Sullivan, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm putting the ring up and. And so Kevin Sullivan told Grizzly Smith or something, Grizzly was another agent, I could work. So Grizzly asked me, do you have your stuff with you? And I said, and of course I did. I said, yes. So I got to wrestle. So I got paid for putting the ring up. I got paid for the travel time, putting the ring up and wrestling. And then the
Wow.
travel time back to San Antonio. And so that check was like, 1,500-1,600 bucks for less than a week's of work.
Wow.
So
Nice.
yeah, so I was making good money for WCW. I was happy doing it. And then I guess, and then through WCW, I mean, they, like I said, they were doing a show in Phoenix, and the local Mexican station wanted a lucha match. So they asked me if I knew anybody in Mexico, which at the time I was going back and forth to Mexico. So I contacted Conan, and Conan referred me to this guy, who referred me to that guy, and it's a big circle. And then someone said Eddie Guerrero, and I called Eddie. I knew Chavo, and I knew Hector. I heard that you had Hector on your show a couple of weeks ago. Um,
That
I'm
was
very
man, that longest interview I've ever done. I've only been doing this for a year. Longest interview, and he told me, JC, longest interview that he's ever done. I had to cut into two parts, into two episodes. But it was an amazing man, great guy, great guy. I'm telling you, it got emotional when he spoke about Eddie. Yeah,
sure.
but it was a very good conversation with him.
I don't know Mondo that well. I met him once or twice in my years ago. Hector and Chavo, sweethearts, man. I mean, Chavo took me under his wing, and I mean, a few years ago, a couple years before he died, we went. I did a show, and Chavo had lived in this town called Bandera, Texas, and it was nearby. So Chavo shows up, and at this time, I'm with Micah, and our daughter is an infant, and so Chavo walks in, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh shit." And then, Micah, my wife is, at the time she was, we were just dating and stuff. Well, I mean, we had a daughter already. So she was like, uh-oh. And then he's like, what do you got there? And I'm like, this is my daughter. And he looks at my daughter. And he's like, are you sure that's your daughter? Because you're an ugly son of a, and she's like, oh shit. And then he tells her, where I'm just playing with him. I love this guy and yada, yada, yada. I love Chavo. I loved Hector, man. Good people. Eddie was a good dude, man. I didn't know Eddie that well. But I got to meet Gory, the dad, years ago. I mean,
Wow.
good family, man. And standing we're actually in the dressing room, standing in the dressing room with Chavo, Hector, Mondo, and Gory was like chills down my spine, because here in Texas, I mean, there's the Von Erichs, and there's the Guerreros, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
the Blanchards, and and the Funks, and that's like
Oh,
that's
yeah,
like
you can't forget the
Texas.
funks.
Yeah,
Absolutely, you can't forget the funks. Yeah.
that's like Texas wrestling royalty. And so here I am, we're in Bandera, Texas. Here I am drinking a beer with Chavo Guerrero, and just shooting the shit. Just, um, I always look back at that, because I mean, every now and then Chavo would call me wherever he was at, hey, cabrón, and I knew right away, yeah, you know, One time he called me and the caller ID had anonymous or whatever on it,
No,
caller ID blocked. So I was like, I thought it was like a uh,
a
telemark.
collector or something or
Yeah, yeah,
telemarketer.
yeah. So I wasn't gonna answer it, and it was like 11 o'clock my time, and so I was like, shit. So I answered, hello, Cabron, and I'm like, ah, shit. He's like, answer your phone. I go, I didn't answer it, and we started talking about what happened was he actually called me from the hospital. He was in the hospital like a month before he passed away, and he never told me that. And so we talked. We talked for about an hour and a half. It was 11 o'clock my time. By the time we got off, it was like 12:30. And I remember telling Micah, "God damn, that guy can talk," you know. And then a month later, I want to say it was Hector, but it may have been somebody else. Called me and said Chavo had passed away, and he had been in the hospital a month before, and he found out he had, I guess, liver cancer. I don't know what it was, but he didn't. But he never told me. He called me from the hospital, and he never told me.
No, so it's amazing. It's amazing the attitude that these people have, and like, and once again, this family. I didn't know Chavo either. I met Hector through Facebook, but man, you can't help but fall in love with this guy. And I'm assuming, from what I'm hearing, the same thing with the rest of his family. Um, he was in the hospital. And he called you, tell you, "Hey, cabrón," and he's playing around, he's joking around, and
Never,
he's in
never
good
knew nothing,
spirits.
man. Never knew nothing. And when I found out, honestly, uh, just to be honest, man, when I found out he had passed away, and he called me from the hospital, never said anything, I was pissed for a little while. I was like, why? You know, I mean, because I mean, like, you know, we're talking like old buddies, like, ah, fuck you, man. You know, got on this and got on, man. You ain't worth the shit. And you know, we're going back and forth like this, and I'm like, when I think about it now, it's like I would never, if I would have known, that conversation would have been completely different. You know what I mean?
That's probably why he didn't want to tell you. Okay, he wanted to be normal. He wanted to be, hey, and he left in peace, man. Now, obviously, he left in peace. He knew God. He knows God. He had, from my understanding, from what Hector told me, he knew God. He had a relationship with God also, and but man, so I mean, sorry, man, because I know you've lost. I mean, I know you guys in the wrestling business have lost a lot of people, a lot of friends. Kevin, we lost Kevin recently. Sid Vicious, Sid Yuri. He
Right.
passed away a
And
couple of days ago or
what a
yesterday. I
lot
mean,
of
I'm sorry.
guys what a lot of guys don't realize is, I mean, and I didn't either for a while, is um even though, I mean, there's thousands of wrestlers, there's, all over the place, but we're actually a tight group. I mean, I every time I hear somebody had passed away, like Chris Candido passed away, um and there was, I
And
think
young
about,
too. Chris Candido died very, very young, just like a
yes.
bunch of guys have died very young.
And the first thing I think about is the car rides we took, and I was sitting next to whoever, and shooting the shit, whatever, just, and having a beer, and some of the guys, were stuck on pills and whatever. And so one minute they may be like, "Yeah, man, that was a great match." We talk about the matches. You should have done this. The crowd reacted. You could have done this better. That was great what you did. And then next thing you know, you're here, and they pass out, and you just drive and take them home, and I'll see you tomorrow. And then years later, you find out they passed away. They had an overdose or whatever, and you're even. Well, I'm not gonna say even with my parents. I think that the only comparison I can make is the passing of my parents. Is they're there one day and the next day they're gone. One day Candido's there, next day he's gone. And I'm not even saying we were good friends. We were just two guys that did couple of shows together. Me and Eddie Guerrero, we weren't best friends, but when I learned that he had passed away, a guy called me early on a Sunday morning and said, "Hey man, Eddie's gone." And when he said that, I knew what he meant, but I didn't want to, hopefully he was messing around. And I'm like, "Huh?" And he said, "Eddie's gone, man." And it took me a second. I said, "What happened?" And this dude said, "Hey man, they found him uh, passed out in the hotel room." And I was like, "Shit." And it's like, like I say, we weren't best friends or nothing like that, but it just hits you a certain way, you know.
Of course, well, it hits you guys because whether you were best friends, you work together though. You guys work
Right.
together. So and it hits us fans when I found out, it broke my heart because as
Sure.
a fan, when you watch these guys are like heroes to us. You to the television, you build something. Just like when I found out, you know, um, when the Chris Benoit
Right.
situation, you
Right.
know, that was heartbreaking. I remember watching Woman, her stage name Woman, Nancy Benoit. I remember watching her in the '80s as a horseman ballet.
I,
Uh,
I I just talked about this with someone earlier today. Was years ago, Kevin Sullivan came down here, and he came down with woman with Nancy,
mm,
and she was as nice as can be. She was, uh, nice. I mean, very friendly and stuff. And then he came back down again with woman and Luna, and Luna was the exact opposite. She was crazy,
Little
and
Khan, wow,
yeah,
another legend.
and today is her passing. She passed away. I don't know, several years ago, but today's her
Yeah, I
anniversary.
think about 12 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
saw your post today. Yeah, I saw your post on her. Yeah.
she was crazy, but she was as nice as can be. She was, I did probably down here in Texas, probably about 10 events with her, and then out abroad, whatever, another 4 or 5. I did a couple of shows with WWF that she was on, and she was all like, Rudy, sweetheart, my
Mm.
baby, what do you, and it's like this, this nice woman is like, growling at me and that type of stuff, and we're all characters, man, or and it's just when you see them drop off, it's like shit, you know. I to this day, I still can't believe uh Chris Benoit, passed away and the things happened the way they happened. I had WWE came to San Antonio one night, and I was backstage with some guys doing extra work, and Eddie goes, "Hey man, where's a good place to party at?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you guys want to do." And I think it was Perry Saturn that said, "Strip club, let's go to the strip club, let's go to." And so I knew all the guys went to this place called PT's. So I said, "Well, there's one by the airport we can go by." And I'm thinking about this place that these guys can meet up with the other guys that were on the crew, And so Eddie's like, "Let's go." So we go to this place called PT's, and we're sitting at this table waiting for our drinks. Chris Benoit's on one side of me, Eddie Guerrero's on the other side, Dean Malenko's across the table, and so is Perry Saturn. And Eddie stood up, and he was like just standing, like he was getting impatient about something. I don't know. But he stood up and he sat down. And so um, Eddie Guerrero wasn't a tall person. He wasn't a big dude. I'm 5'8". He was maybe a little bit shorter than me. But when he sat down, his arms were huge. And I'm like, damn boy, you're getting big, man. And he was like, bro, I'm gonna get bigger than Hunter. And I mean, Triple H is a big dude too,
The guy's like a
but Trip
wall, dude.
yeah, but he's like 6'4" or something. He's like, and I'm like, come on, dude. He goes, watch. And then that was it. Um, and then me and Chris started talking. And you hear the stories. Chris Benoit talks about his son and he talks about his family. And he does. He did. We talked about my son, and I have two daughters. And we talked, and he talked about his kid. I think he said something like his kid had some kind of health issue.
He did
And
have, yeah. I remember hearing about that. His son Daniel had,
Yeah, 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 yeah. There you go.
yeah.
And so I listened to him, and he talked and whatever, and so then then a couple of years later, whatever, when I heard about what happened, just like everybody else, man, that can't be. It can't. And I to this day I refuse to believe that he did whatever he's accused of doing. I just can't believe, the way he talked. I mean, and whatever, like I say this all the time, whatever goes on behind closed doors, we don't know.
Right.
All I know is the guy that I would run into in the quarters of the venues when I did extra work for WWF or WE, and the guy that I talked to at the strip club. I would, if you, there was nothing in the back of my head that said, "Man, this guy will kill somebody if he pisses." That never crossed my mind. So, to this, like I said, to this day, I mean, and then top it off, some of the evidence isn't even, to me. It's just not solid enough. So to this day,
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, Rudy. I mean, I've heard the stories. I don't like. I've never met nobody, and I'm getting to know some of the wrestlers through Facebook. Thanks to social media
Right?
and through the podcast I'm doing. I've gotten to know some of the guys, and but I've heard stories about Chris Benoit. He loved his family, so
Sure.
I agree with you. He couldn't be in his. He wasn't in a right state of mind if he did what he did.
No,
It wasn't Chris Benoit doing it.
the thing
Something
is
was
that the thing
not
is that
not accusing, not saying that. Oh, not applauding what he did, but he couldn't have been in the right state of mind.
the thing is that we know now that there's a thing called CTE, and we know with some of the stuff that we as wrestlers do, even even me, I'm not gonna say never. I've taken very few chair shots, very few. That shit hurts. Um, I've taken a bunch of bumps. One of my, one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is being able to bump. Even now, just being able to take good bumps. Um, but even just from taking bumps, you're doing damage to your brain. And Chris did a lot of crazy stuff. Someone just sent me a video. Hey, what do you think of this? And it was a video of Chris doing a dive out of the ring, and he missed the guy, or the guy moved out of the way, and Chris goes headfirst into the announcer's table. And it's like, holy shit! And knowing what we know now about CTE and brain damage and all stuff, maybe he wasn't in his right state of mind. I don't know. I don't know. I know that I can only speak for myself. I know that um, I get forgetful. I've noticed that I switch tempers. I can be like, ha ha ha, 1 minute, and the next minute I can be, whatever. I mean, I see that in myself. So for a guy like Chris, who took his work to a whole different level, and always coming down with that headbutt deal, I'm sure, and then I think they did an autopsy on his brain, that said he had a brain of an 80-year-old man.
Wow.
So yeah, so I'm sure there were some mental issues playing in there somewhere. What gets me is I see people, he was a great wrestler, he was a, icon and legendary and all, and they're applauding his work and the things he did in his work, but then they're going to shit on him for the results of his work. You can't have it both ways. He's either, he went off, if he went off the deep end, it was because of his work. And you have to be able to understand that. That's the way I feel anyway.
I agree.
And
I agree with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. The
and
fact that the WWE, the fact that WWE wants to act like he never existed is wrong, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, that's
I
for
get
whatever
it.
reason.
Politics. It's
Yes,
politics. That's what it is.
exactly. And that's fine. I mean, but it is what you put enough time in this business, and you're going to have those issues. Even if you do the minimum, like me, I just took bumps, man. Nobody ever. I think I went through one table in my life.
Hold on. Let me ask you this, because can you wrestle Bruiser Brody, man? They
Right.
called him Bruiser Brody for a reason. I mean, and you didn't get any savage beat. I did see
So
a match between. How many times did you wrestle him? 'Cause I saw a match of you and him on YouTube, and that only lasted about a few minutes.
yeah,
But
I wrestled Brody probably like 4 or 5 times, I would say.
and in 4 or 5 times,
And and just kind of like to pull the curtain back a little bit. He always took care of me. If and you may have heard stories about other guys as well. If he doesn't like you, he's gonna let you have it, and if he does like you, then he's gonna take it easy on you. Well, he must have really liked me because
He took care of
uh,
you.
very good care. I mean, I watch matches where it looks like he kicked the shit out of me right in the face, and I don't remember anything. I mean, not that he knocked me out. It's just I don't
Right,
remember
right,
getting
right.
hurt. And
He
I've been
did
in
it
matches.
well.
Yes, yes. As long as you did your part correctly, he would take care of you. Now, I did a match with a guy. I want to say was his name was Bill Rathke. I think that was his name. I don't remember, but it was a handicap match. Me and this other guy with Brody, and me and Brody win the match. We started off and we did a couple of things, whatever. I got out, and then the other guy comes in, and I'm watching, and it looks pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, Brody just kicks the guy's head off. He just like booted him right in the head, and I was like, oh my god. And then Brody grabs him, gives him a forearm right in the back, and just like lays it in. And I'm like, oh my god. And he just like takes maybe a minute to just beat the living heck out of this guy. And then I hear him say tag, and so the guy, you know, runs, and I'm like, oh hell. So I stick my hand out because I have to, and the guy tags me, and I go in waiting to get my butt beat, and all of a sudden he gives me a boot, and in the stomach, and I don't even feel it, but I register, I react for it, I sell for him, whatever, and then I get a forearm in the back, and the only way I knew he forearmed me in the back was because I felt his skin. I felt, I didn't feel a thud on my back. I felt him touch me, and that's how it was. And then we go to the back. This is back in the old days when separate dressing rooms. So we go in the back, and the other guy says, "Man, Frank was being an asshole tonight. He was being stiff tonight, man. He knocked the shit out of me." And I was just like, "I'm fine." So I mean, I was never the guy that played the politics, and I got into wrestling, and my mom and dad were upset about it. So it didn't make any sense for me to make waves and piss off people, and then get kicked out of wrestling, because then I have to go back to my parents and say, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm sorry. I need help." So I figured out a way just to stay neutral, man. Just to go in there, and that's why I teach my kids. My students, go in there, do your thing, and get out. Don't get in the middle of the he said, she said. Don't get in the middle of all the drama that goes on in the dressing rooms. Just do your thing and get out of there.
Love it. Hey, and did you ever wrestle Abdullah the Butcher?
A couple of times, yes. I refereed. There's a match on YouTube somewhere where Brody and Abdullah the Butcher are doing a match, and I'm the
And you're
referee.
the ref?
I'm the
I'm gonna have to
referee.
look that
Yeah,
up. I
yeah.
mean,
And then,
they wrestle so many times against each other. Those
oh
were
yeah.
great matches. What are your thoughts on Abdullah and his health, man? Because he's been battling his health, um, and the guy. I've heard stories. Many people talk crap about him, and the guy seems like a really nice guy. I reached out to him. He gets back to me, and he said, "Hey champ, I'm doing better." And I reached out to him, and I've to see how he's doing, and he seems like a good guy. But I've heard stories about him from the ring, so I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on him? How he was on the ring?
So my job in the beginning when I was younger was to pick up the talent from the airport and take him to the hotel. So one of the guys I picked up was Abdullah the Butcher, and he did the old, again. This is 1982 or whatever. He did the old kayfabe stuff. He didn't really talk too much. But as the day went on, and 'cause I had to take him to the hotel and then wait for him, then take him to go eat and wait for him to eat, and then take him to the arena, and so I was driving around for the whole day. As the day went by, he saw that I wasn't some knucklehead kid. I opened the door for him. I opened the trunk so he could put his bag in there. I mean, I was taking care of the talent, and so he started talking, and he was very nice to me. He always been nice to me. There's a part where you'll see, if you pull up the Brody and Abdullah match, where you see him like go to hit me, and for whatever reason I kind of fell a little early, uh, but um, When we go to the back, he says, hey, did I catch you with anything? And I'm like, no. He goes, I didn't, because I think he went to go jab me with the fork. And he's like, I didn't catch you with the fork or not. I said, no. He goes, you sure? I go, yeah, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, all right, buddy, thank you. And I'm like, thank you. Abby was he was very cool with me. Again, I wasn't the guy that created any issues or
Any
anything.
drama?
Yeah, I mean, here's
You're
a story
drama
for you.
free, which is awesome.
So here's a story for you. Well, now I'm not, but back then I was. But here's a story for you. So, so one day he did a show in Austin, and I was there. I wasn't on the show. I was just there to. I took somebody up there. Something I don't remember. And he goes, hey, Rudy, right? I go, yeah, yeah. He goes, hey, how you been? So we talked for a while, and at the time we were going up to Ring of Honor, I think. And so he says, hey, if you ever go through Georgia, come by one of my restaurants, brother. I'll take care of you. And I'm like, all right, well, and he gave me a card. I said, okay. So at the time we would do Ring of Honor on Saturday, but we'd go through Atlanta and we'd do Cornelia, Georgia, which was NWA Wildside on Friday, and then wrestle. Basically, it was just to get out of the van and take a break for a while. So we'd wrestle and then go up to Ring of Honor. So we got to Georgia a little early, and I was with a couple of guys, and they were like, "Where do you want to eat at?" And I'm like, "Hey, you know what? Abby invited us one time, a couple of years ago. Hopefully, he'll remember me, but he invited me to come eat at his place." So the guys were like, "Oh shit, Abdullah the Butcher! Oh my god, you know him? Oh my god, oh my god!" So we find his restaurant, and we walk in. Nice, it was a nice restaurant. And the lady's like, "Can I help you?" I said, "My name's Rudy Gonzalez, and I'm a friend of Abdullah's, and he invited us to come eat." And so she goes, hold on. So she goes to the back and he comes out. He's like, hey, brother. I go, hey, how you doing? We talk for a minute. He goes, sit down. He goes, order whatever you want. I said, okay. So he says, order whatever you want. He doesn't say it's on me. so, so that's the part that I didn't catch. But he did say back at the show a couple of years ago, come by my place, I'll take care of you. So, so he
Oh
says, order
man,
whatever you want. I said, all right. So the lady sits us down. We ordered ribs. I think he had like Chinese food too. We ordered ribs, sweet and sour pork. We ordered um the three
A
of
to
us.
Z. You
We
order A to Z.
well, it was the three of us. We ordered $85 worth of food. How do I know we ordered $85 worth of food? Because we got a bill for $85. And I'm like, oh shit. And I told the guys it's 85, but it's 85, 45 or whatever it was. And they're like, who's paying for it? I said, I said, I think hold on, let me get the waitress. So I called the waitress over and so I said, Abby invited us to to come eat at his restaurant. And she goes, and I go, so I'm like, shit. I'm like, could you let him know that we're leaving? I didn't want to say, I didn't want to be rude and say he's paying for this. I said, can I let him know we're leaving? And she goes, all right. So she walks off. And so $85 was like, that's part of our gas money. So, and at the time we would stop and we'd eat like at Love's truck stop or, 99-cent hot dogs, whatever. We're on a budget. So Abby comes around the corner and he's like, hey, brother, you leaving already? I said, yeah. He goes, how'd you like the food? I go, man, this food's great, man. Great. He goes, that's good. I go, yeah, man. This bill's like $85. I didn't think we ate that much. Hoping he would say, I got it, brother. But he's like, yeah. He just says, yeah, I'm glad you liked it. And I'm like, yeah. And the other two guys I mean, they're sweating. They're like, shit. So I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna get going. He goes, all right, you guys, where y'all going to? I said, we're going to Cornelia up the highway. He goes, y'all have a safe drive. He goes, I got to get going too. So he just walks off, and, and I'm like,
All right,
son of
85 bucks. We're gonna walk everywhere else.
I'm like, son of a bitch. So the guys are like, what do we do? I was like, I got it. I always take care of money, extra cash with me. So I'm like, I got it, guys. I got it. So that's my Abby story. But I mean, he was always cool and stuff with me. I mean, I never.
That's a great story.
But I will say this, man, about wrestling fans, and it's not all wrestling fans. Like you said, there's some fans that look at these guys as heroes and stuff like that, and what have you. But I mean, there's some fans like I could have swore just last year or something. I saw some postings. I forgot for what, but people were just like shitting on Sid Vicious. I mean, for whatever reason, he wasn't dedicated to wrestling. He took time off for baseball or whatever. I remember seeing people post negative stuff about Sid Vicious,
So
and
let
then
so so let's talk crap about Michael Jordan. He took a couple years off for baseball. You
eh,
remember that?
yeah, well, yeah, exactly, exactly. So and then Sid Vicious passes away, and now I see nothing but he was a great guy. He was my favorite wrestler. He was. I remember
He
that
wasn't my
time
favorite
that.
wrestler, but the guy, listen, he was one of those guys that you love to hate. Just like Abdullah the Butcher did a great job in
Right,
in making people hate him.
right.
Freebirds, great job at making people hate them. The fans, these were good. These were good talent. Sid Vicious,
Good talent.
the guy was a scumbag. I don't know. I don't know him. The guy was a great wrestler. He knew how to put on a show. He knew
Like
how to put on a show, and he was a good opponent for Hogan, Flair, Sting, etc., etc.
and you're right. And like one of the guys that I tried, when I was younger, that I tried to emulate was Tully Blanchard. Tully wasn't a big dude. Tully was 5'10", 5'11". I'm not sure if he was over 210. I mean, he wasn't really a big guy at all. But man, he could draw heat. He had people when him and Gino would come out to the ring, people were throwing cups of ice at him, cups of beer, popcorn. I mean, he drew some serious. Those guys drew some serious heat. But I mean, Tully was always cool with me. Manny Fernandez, same thing. In my opinion, Manny was a great worker that never got his.
I agree.
But shit, when he was babyface, he was babyface. When he was a heel, oh my god, people hated him. Manny came out one time and threw tortillas out into the crowd, and people were pissed. I told this guy one time, just when I do shows, I try and pick a little bit off of what were years ago, and I try and hey, try this, dude. And so I told this guy, hey, if you want to get heat, throw out tortillas to the crowd. And he was like, I ain't doing that. I don't want to get my ass kicked. I'm like, no, you'll get heat, man. You'll get. I ain't doing that. I'm sorry, Rudy. I ain't gonna do that. I'm like, man. But I mean, Manny got. I mean, he got tremendous. People were pissed at him. Buddy Roberts, man. You could have swore I was, you know, some student when I worked with Buddy Roberts. I was I'm still a bottom guy. I wasn't a name or anything like that. But Buddy Roberts made me look like the next. I don't know. Chavo Guerrero. I don't know. He made me look like a star. And it wasn't nothing I did. I'll be the first to say it wasn't anything I did. It was all Buddy Roberts. Facial expression, body language, arguing with the audience, whatever. Um, there just aren't guys like that no more. Nobody wants to piss off the fans.
And that's the problem. And let me tell you, I'll be honest. I don't watch the product anymore. I might every now and then watch just to see what's going on, but I cannot. I don't. I listen. Ric Flair was notorious in pissing off the fans. Roddy Piper. I remember the story about Roddy Piper when he went. I forgot where it was. They started playing La Cucaracha as the national anthem with the bagpipes.
Right.
Dude, they wanted to kill the man. Gino
Right.
Hernandez was notorious for pissing people off. You know.
Yep. Yep.
And speaking of Gino Toli, I had Baby Doll on the show as well. I had Nicola Roberts.
Nicola Roberts. Right. Her
Yeah, I
dad
had
used to
her on.
run. Her dad used to run in Lubbock, Texas. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
I
she
know.
told me
Dude.
about that. Yeah. Man, let me ask you. I'm gonna mention. How about Andre the Giant? Did you ever work with Andre?
I never worked with him. I was in the same dressing room with him. Huge man, but and that's an understatement. But I mean, you hear stories like um, he would have as a wristwatch. Those little time watches that guys would put in their front pocket or whatever. Those,
Yeah,
like okay, that was his wristwatch. He just modified it to from being a time watch. I mean, he added a strap to it, whatever, to go around his wrist. I think someone told me that one time he drank like 65 beers in one sitting and wasn't even drunk.
I've heard stories about that too. And he would drink bottles of wine and like if it was water.
Right, right.
Um, um, what are your thoughts? Speaking of that, because you work with a lot of guys, and you have nowadays. How do you compare the wrestling of today to back in the day, from the what we call the golden age, 80s and 90s?
Honestly, man, I don't think there's a comparison, man. It's I say this jokingly, but I'm also serious. But I don't think guys today are willing to do the things that we did back in the day to survive in this business. For example, my first when I first started, when I first got into wrestling, my dad kicked me out of our house, so I had nowhere to stay. So I just happened to mention it in the dressing room, and a couple of guys, remember who they were, said, "Stay with us." So, and they're bottom guys. I can't think of their names. Anyway, and so their apartment was a one-bedroom apartment, and they were guys. We were younger guys. So there was no vacuum cleaner. There was no
Oh
trash
wow!
cans. The apartment was trash, and there was a blanket and a pillow for one guy, and a blanket and a pillow for the other guy. And I had to go to Kmart or Walmart, whatever it was at the time, and buy a blanket and a pillow for me. And they smoked and they drank. They got up, they wrestled, came back home, smoked, and they drank. I was 18 years old. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. Um, I was out of my element. So to get out of that, I had to. Like I said earlier, I didn't know the wrestling business, so I had to learn the business from the bottom up. So I volunteered to put the ring up. I helped with T-shirts. I sold tickets. I did whatever I could do to get a job with Southwest Wrestling. Today, guys won't do that. That's not my job. And I'm not saying everybody, but
Yeah,
that's the mentality of kids nowadays. Is I'll tell I'll get guys that'll message me all the time. What do I need to do to make it? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And the first thing I tell them is move. Go somewhere where nobody knows you, and move and make it work. Well, I can't do that because I have a job. Well, you can. There's a big country, man. You can find a job anywhere. Well, I got to go to school. Well, you have to drop out of school, I guess, because I did. I mean, guys will find any excuse not to sacrifice, not to uh, uh, do without. When at the end, if you, I'm a complete believer in if you work at something hard enough, you're going to get something out of it. It may
yeah,
not be, you may not get the top of the world, but you're gonna move forward. And so, like for me, I've never worked for, I've never been under contract with WWF, but I go to the performance center periodically to help train their guys. I was never under contract with WCW, but the 2 years that I worked for them, for a total of 42, 38, whatever that is, 70, 70, 80 days, I made $30,000. Aside from all the other stuff that I was making. I mean, I made good money. I got to work with a bunch of good guys. Um, I've never been a world champion of anything. But I'm wrestling. I'm 62 years old. I'm still in the wrestling business. I enjoy it, you know. So you may not get exactly what you want. You may not,
Yeah.
but you're still going to get something, and then you learn to adjust and work with. If it was meant to be, it's meant to be. So and guys aren't willing. Guys want they want now. They want I have a guy that I'm training, and he's already talking about. He's only been training with me. What is this? August, so 8 months. He's only been training with me for 8 months, and he's telling me next year when I go to NXT, and I'm like, what? Who says you're going to NXT? And I'm not trying to be mean to him. It's just
Right.
it doesn't happen like that. It's there's you know someone said something about Joe Henry or something. Is that his name? Joe Henry? Man, he came out of nowhere. Joe Henry's been wrestling for a while. He didn't come out.
Mark
He's on
Henry.
Joe Henry, the guy that he's on NXT and he's on TNA.
Oh, okay, okay, the younger guy. Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What I think that's his name. Anyway, and someone was like, "Man, he came out of nowhere. Who is he? He's over Wrestling Station." No, he's been wrestling for a while. He's just now getting his name out there. That's the way it is, man.
Yeah, I've heard stories, especially back in the day, where man, guys were on lima beans and or rice and and eating out of a can and you know and they sometimes spend days with sleeping
Stone
in the car,
Stone
sleeping in the car for weeks at a time.
Steve Austin tells a story about one time he would buy a bag of potatoes
I remember that story. Yeah.
and eat them raw because couldn't afford anything else. When Brian Danielson and Brian Kendrick were training down here at Sean's wrestling school,
Mhm.
they would eat. You're Hispanic,
Me? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I'm Hispanic. Yeah.
Okay, so this is sacrilegious. They would eat peanut butter tacos, and I I know this because one day after training, I said, "Hey guys, y'all want to go grab something to eat? I'll buy," because I knew they were broke. So they said, "Yeah, we'll have to go home and change and whatever." And I said, "Okay." So I went by. They were still changing, whatever. So they said, "Come on in." Their apartment had nothing in it except for some VHS tapes and a TV and a tape player. And so I opened up the refrigerator, and there's like a package with 4 or 5 tortillas in it, and then there's a thing of peanut butter. And so I'm like, "Hey, what do you guys eat around here?" And Brian Kendrick goes, "You're looking at it." I like peanut butter and tortillas. And then Brian Kendrick says, "It makes a mean taco." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he said that's what they ate was peanut butter tacos.
Wow. But
Now, so like maybe 7 8 years ago, I ran in. Brian Kendrick came up to San Antonio, and we talked. Me and him are still friends. I consider Brian and guys like Brian and Paul London and Brian. I consider them my best friends in the wrestling business. So Brian comes in and I'm like, "Hey, you want to grab some meat after the show?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So we go to this place called 54th Street um, Cafe or whatever, 54th Street something or other. It's a restaurant. And so we order, we get is me, Micah, and our daughter and Brian, and we order and what have you, and have some drinks. And so I kind of I see the bill, it's like $175 or something. And so I'm getting ready to grab it. And then Brian says, "I got it, coach." And I'm like, "Huh?" He goes, "I got it." And he pulls out a little black American Express card. He goes, "I got it." And first thing that comes to mind is I remember this guy eating peanut butter tacos. This is incredible, and stuff like that, man. It's that that makes me happy, you know, when I see these guys progressing like that. That have progressed like that. But I mean, you got to do that, you've got to put the work in, man. And some of these kids today, they just won't do it.
yeah, no, no, yeah, I've heard, I've heard. Um, Let me ask you a couple more questions. I don't want to take too much more of your time. But again, thank you, man. Thank you. The stories I love hearing. Um, what is your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? who is your Mount Rushmore wrestling?
Man, that's a hard question
I
because
know,
I mean, there there's
I
so
know.
many figures and there's so many
I'll
guys that have
tell you what.
done.
I'll tell you. I'll let you. It doesn't have to be four. You could interact and say, "Listen, okay." You give me some honorable mentions.
Okay, I'll say one Luthez.
Wow,
Yeah, one Luthez.
definitely.
Um, I would say Wahoo. I would say Flair. I would say Andre.
Mm.
And Moolah. I got a woman in there, but I mean,
Thank you. Wow,
yeah, I don't.
wow,
The women, especially now, man, the women are just as much a part of the business today, than
huge.
yeah. I mean, back in the day, we would put not we because I wasn't a promoter, but they would put Evelyn Green versus uh, Evelyn Green, Susan Green versus Evelyn Stevens, and it's no big deal. And they'd tell them go do 10 minutes or go do 5 minutes, whatever, no big deal. And it wasn't. Usually, the women's matches where guys would go to the restroom or they'd go to a snack bar or something, or and the girls. I mean, Evelyn Stevens was a tough woman, man, and so was Susan Green, but they just didn't get the recognition that they should have gotten. They didn't get the props like they should have gotten. Um, Now the girls are going crazy, man. They're all women promotion. Like I said, Micah's with Wow. That's an all women promotion, and there's a lot of female talent. But to be honest with you, man, and I'm not, this may ruffle some feathers, but I mean it's the truth though. A lot of the girls today, even though female wrestling is more popular today than it was back in the day, a lot of these girls couldn't hold a candle to a girl like what's her name, like Evelyn Stevens or Susan Green or Wendy Richter or Medusa, or I mean Missy Hyatt was a tough chick back then. I mean, a lot of guys, a lot of guys shit on Sunny, but hey, man, the girls
She was
back in the
great too. Yeah,
oh yeah,
Sunny was fun to watch. Yes.
yeah. I mean, and that was back when again the females weren't looked at as they are now. But and it's funny though because like I said, the girls now couldn't hold a candle to some of those girls, and I knew a lot of them, not personally, but I knew them very well because we'd sit there in the dressing room. I mean, they were like one of the guys, you know, and the only difference was like they would like, maybe there was a girl named uh, Jasmine, Princess Jasmine, and she would just say, okay, boys, turn your heads, and everybody would turn their head, and she'd change, and then, all right, you can take a peek now or whatever, and all the guys would, the guys respected the female talent, and I mean, it was just a whole different world back then. But the women weren't held as high as the females now, and that's sad. But yeah, I would put Moolah on that Mount Rushmore, and then if you want honorable mentions, I would put Missy Hyatt on there. I would put um, Tully on there. Um, Carlos Colon.
Oh wow.
Uh, why? Is that what you said?
No, I said wow. Carlos
Oh yeah,
Colon. I didn't think about it. Yeah,
I would
that's
put
another great.
Carlos.
Yeah, he's
I would
amazing.
I would put Ray Jr. on there. Um, you know, just and I know someone's gonna say, "What about Eddie Guerrero? You just talked about him." Well, I mean, he could go on there also. I mean, you could go for days and just name
Oh, we
names.
could talk about yeah. We could spend hours talking about who the greats and who even the pioneers.
You could put
Uh,
Johnny Valentine on there. It would be better if you did like a Mount Rushmore of heels, but even that would be a long list. You could do a Mount Rushmore of baby faces. You could do a Mount Rushmore of women. You could do a Mount Rushmore of African American wrestlers. You can do a I mean, the list just goes on and on.
um, from not necessarily yours, but who's your favorite? Who has who? What wrestler? Not now of all time. It could be now or of all time. Who has your favorite finisher?
Oh, favorite finisher.
You know what? I would say um, I would say Ric Flair, and the reason why is because everybody has their little finisher to do, but Flair's he would once he started working on your legs, he knew it was coming, and he made it made sense. Like some guys, maybe their finish was a bulldog, but you know they spent the whole match working on the guy's arm. I'm the guy that likes the common sense or what makes sense aspect of wrestling. So Ric Flair, he'd start putting you in the spinning toe hold or whatever. He'd start working on your leg, whatever, like, and then boom, and then he puts you in the figure four. I'm not when I see guys, you know, do a finish that has nothing to do with the match. It kind of I kind of like lose interest in it, or I lost interest in it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. 'Kay, he starts working on your leg. He starts either cut from behind, or he'll take go outside, ram the leg against the steel post.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And you mentioned Mula. I've heard stories of her abusing the women. Was that true? Did you hear of anything like that, or is that you don't have to comment? You can say that, JC.
No,
I'd
man.
rather not talk.
I mean, what you gonna do? Not book me? I mean, I mean, I've heard you're. What I've learned in the wrestling business is you're cool. Everyone likes you until you do something that they disagree with or that doesn't go along with their agenda.
Hmm.
So I've heard a lot of women praise Moolah and also refute the accusations. No, that never happened, or what have you. So, and then I've heard other women like, she did this, she did that, she abused us, she took our money, she did. You know, the way I see stuff like that is if you're being abused, leave. Um, if she's taking your money, leave. And you can come back with, well, then you don't get booked. All right, then to me, if I have to give up my integrity or whatever to do something or to get something, I'd rather not do it.
Great
So
point.
so I mean, like I mean, we can, you know, there was a girl that wrestled down here for a little while. Her name was Linda Gonzalez. Now she did tell me that she lived there with where Moolah had her place, and one of the rules was they could not date either the hired help, like the gardeners and stuff like that, or they couldn't date men or something about they couldn't date. So she got hooked up with one of the guys over there, and before Moolah could find out, they left the compound. They left the area. They left her stable. But that's what I'm saying. If you don't like something, then leave. Don't
Yeah.
sit there and keep doing it and then come back later and say, man, that was all messed up. Well, why didn't you just leave? If you didn't like it, why didn't you just leave?
Good point. Very good point. Great answer. Great answer. Um, eh, Let me ask you this about the Monday Night Wars. If WCW would have won, would WCW still be around in 2024? Do you think, or is that
I,
something we can never know?
the way I this is my thought. I think it was just a matter of time before WCW would have started falling anyway.
Mhm.
Um, Vince McMahon, and again, I don't know. I'm just seeing I'm just talking about what I have seen from the outside. But Vince McMahon has a way of maybe something's not working. Well, he'll make it work. He'll figure out a way to make it work. He'll figure out a way to finagle his way out of a bad situation. He'll find a way to make a negative into a positive. He's not a dumb man. He changed pro wrestling. I mean,
Yeah.
and I talked about this on my Facebook today also. Joe Blanchard came up with an idea of having um, a big event once a year. Is called the event, and I think the one I was part of was in 84. So I think the first event he had was in 81. WrestleMania didn't start until 82.
84.
84. Yeah.
Yeah, either 84 or 85. You're right. Yeah.
So, but Joe Blanchard already had started doing this thing called the event since 2000, since 81. So he was already 2 years ahead of, of Vince. Vince had the smartness, I guess, to rob all the territories of their top stars, which is fine. The
Hmm.
territories, all the promoters in the territories back then should have had guys. Just like if your star quarterback leaves, you have to have a replacement. You can't just, oh shit, what do we do? And so I don't think anybody was prepared for that. So Vince took all the top stars and he created this big promotion, which, if I remember correctly, there were several, like Vern Gagne, I think, tried to do it, where they tried to bring several promotions together. Like there was a Rick Martel versus uh, Ric Flair match, world champion versus world champion or something. There's always the ideas of trying to put these wrestlers from different promotions against each other in these dream matches. Well, instead of working with other promotions, Vince just took the talent and made these dream matches under his own flag, under his own
Yeah.
banner. So and this was during the golden age of wrestling, as we knew it. Um, Somehow or another, he figured out a way to make money and did what he did what he did, and I think it was just a matter of time. I mean, I was with WCW right towards the beginning of when I left when me and Joe Blanchard left, like maybe a year later, Bischoff came in. But the damage was already done because they were offering guaranteed contracts. And so the way I got to work on some of the shows was Luger didn't show up or somebody didn't show up. So there's an open spot. So, well, Rudy's got his stuff, so let's put him in. But, and I'd get paid, whatever I was getting paid. I wasn't under contract. So these guys were still getting paid, even though they were no showing. And after a while, that becomes a problem. And so, Vince had guys under contract, but if you didn't work, you didn't get paid. I mean, he had his own
And he'll
way
get
of
rid
doing
of
it.
them. And he'll get rid of them.
Yeah,
He got rid
exactly.
of Undertaker. I mean,
He-
Undertaker eventually got rid. I mean, he said he put up with it for the last time, if I'm not mistaken, was '96.
right.
Um, and he got rid of him. He got rid of him. He did not mind firing people, from
So
my understanding.
exactly. So exactly. So I mean, Vince will figure out a way. He may be down. Like right now, there's rumors of him looking to start another promotion. I don't know if that's true or not.
I
Of
don't
him
think
start.
he's too old. I think he's done. I think he's. I mean, in my
Yeah,
opinion, I could be wrong. I mean, I think he's
but
done.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did though. If someone said, if I woke up tomorrow morning and someone said Vince McMahon has started All American Pro Wrestling Federation. Oh shit! Then I'm gonna find out where the TV's at, what TV station they're on, and how to watch the program and stuff. And because, I mean, he'll figure out a way. Vince is a very smart man, and I think Bischoff and all the guys that were in WCW and controlling things, I think they're smart people too. But I think Vince is just a little bit above everybody else, and so I figured it was just a matter of time before I didn't think WWF was gonna buy out WCW, but I figured it was just a matter of time before the ratings started switching over, and the popularity started switching over, and WCW would be having some issues.
Listen, the whole NWO thing was a great idea. That was probably the most genius thing, but it was gonna get old
And it
eventually,
did, and it
and it
did.
did get old. Everybody joined when it was just the cool group. Everybody became an NWO member. Everybody. And
Right.
then and then the NW then Sting, who was WC pure WCW, became NWO also. And I go, "Oh, this is turning crap." I
Right.
go, this, and it became bad television. It became bad wrestling,
Right.
in
And
my
I there,
opinion.
there was a time when, I mean, Monday night, I had nothing to do, so I had the remote in my hand, and I would watch Raw, Nitro,
Same here.
Raw.
I remember that.
You
So
know,
did I.
but I'd always switch over to Nitro when the cruiserweights were on because being on the inside part of the business, you kind of know what's going on. And when I saw too much Hogan, too much Savage, too much Kevin Nash, and I don't want to see that. Um, and then there's not just, there's politics involved also, and there's
Yep.
ego involved. That just turns me off. So I would watch when Eddie Guerrero or Kidman or the cruiserweights were on. That's when I'd watch Nitro. Um, but as true as just the way wrestling is, you could see where they were kind of like trying to squash the cruiserweights, and I'm like, why would you do that, man? These guys are working their asses off. Psychosis and these other guys are
Who went to Guerrero? I remember them. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they're working their butts off, and you're trying to squash them, and so I kind of like completely quit watching Nitro. Um, but at the same time, man, WWE, WWF, whatever, they were kicking ass with The Rock and Triple H and entrances and the whole nine, the music, everything about WWF was just over the top. Um, I mean, there was you hear the glass shatter, and people pop because they knew that was Steve Austin. I mean, everything they did was just on the money, and it wasn't like that at WCW.
And with the WWF back then, I agree with you. And with the WCW, it was like a script. You knew what was going to happen every week.
Very much, yes.
Again, it got old. With the WWF, you did not know what was going to happen.
Right.
You didn't know. It was a surprise. So they kept you on the edge of your seat.
Right.
And so yeah, and I think that's what it really started shifting. And then out of nowhere, you see Mankind winning the world title. You go, what?
Right.
It kept it interesting. It kept it interesting. So I agree. Matt, anything else you want to add before I let you go? I kept you on for a long time. Anything else you want to add?
No, hey man, don't. I mean, I enjoy these podcasts and talking and sharing some of the old the old school stuff with the listeners and what have you, and don't feel bad uh taking so long, dragging us out so long, whatever. I don't mind this at all.
No,
um
I would definitely like to do a part two because I have a list of names. I want to hear stories. I love hearing stories. So
sure.
I would
Sure.
like to book you again. I would like to set up another time and so we could talk about some more history, some more, and your thoughts on other topics throughout the wrestling and certain organizations and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, so I'll shoot you some some other dates because I've been doing this for a year nonstop, and I'm about to cut it off and take a break.
Man,
And
I tried.
I'm gonna turn it to seasons. I'm gonna make it into seasons. I'm gonna probably hit up to episode 50. That's gonna be the last episode of the year, and then I'm gonna start it again in February, unless something
I,
else comes up and I have to I'll do a special.
I thought I would be a smart aleck, and I went and got some recording stuff, and I thought I would do my own podcast.
You should.
Man, that thing lasted seven episodes.
Why? But all that.
I it takes a lot of work to do that stuff, man.
It well, it does, especially
My
if you're gonna
hat
do it by yourself. Especially if you're
my
gonna do it by
hat
yourself.
my hat is off to you, man. It takes a lot of work, and before you know, okay, I got one podcast done. Okay, now got to get ready for the next one, and then okay, now I got the second one. Okay, now I got to get ready for the next one. I didn't have. I train guys. I run the school. I promote shows,
Yeah,
and then
you're super busy.
yeah. So it's like holy cow. So finally, a guy asked me, he's like, yeah, sent me a message. Hey man, I listened to your podcast. Whatever happened to it? And I'm like, really? He goes, really? What? I'm like, you were listening, And I had a thing where I had to, I knew how many listeners. He's like, yeah, man, I thought it was pretty good, but I'm like, I just didn't have time to do it, so I kind of quit doing it. That's not my thing, man. I
Well,
put my I
I
put my
thought it wasn't my thing either. I tell everybody, oh JC, you're doing a pretty good job. I go, I'm enjoying myself. The day I say this is not fun anymore, it's gonna be my last episode. Because when I
exactly.
first started this, I said, I'm gonna start my own episode. It's called now the Bald Guy Show. It used to be called the Bald Guy's Opinion, when I first started. And the first 3 or 4 episodes was just me talking. It was just me. I go, this
Right.
sucks. This is boring. This is not gonna last long. So I said, you know what? I need to start getting some interviews. I need to start getting people in here. So I got a couple. I started finding people on Facebook, and I started finding people. And my very first interview was Joe Rubo, who I don't know if you remember the movie, The Last American Virgin.
Oh yeah.
Well, David, the guy played the chubby guy, David.
Yep. Yep.
That was my very first interview. My second interview was an old buddy of mine, Rudy Gill, which I've known for over 20. I've known him almost 30 years. He's a singer. He used to be the lead singer for a band named Secret Society,
Right.
from Miami. So, and that's it. You know what? This is cool. I like this. I like meeting people. I like hearing stories. This is where this show is gonna have to go if I'm gonna make it last. But I'm not here, and people, and I get people trying to hit me up and trying to make money. Hey, do you want to get more listeners? I go, look, listen. If I get one listener, if I get 100 listeners, if I get 1,000 listeners, it's good, great or not. It doesn't matter. Even if it's one listener, or if I get 0 listeners for the episode, I don't care. I'm doing it for me and for because I want to have fun. I like listening to stories. And Rudy, you were awesome. I enjoyed myself today.
I really appreciate that, man. And I enjoyed talking to you. And I get guys every now and then say you ought to write a book, but I think when I'm gone, I'm taking all my stories with me. Because I mean, I
It's
like
funny
like
you said it. I was going to ask you, but you should write a story, a book, man. You've wrestled so many guys,
you said
and
it in
you
the
have.
beginning. You said it in the very beginning. Wrestlers can tell stories, and you're right. I mean, I would sit in the car and listen to guys like Bobby Jaggers and Manny Fernandez and you know Brett not Bret Hart. What's his name? Brett. His brother is Mad Dog Buster. Brett Sawyer. I mean, I'd listen to guys and they're telling stories, and yes, they embellish them a little bit, but that's what makes the story the story. You can say, yeah, we drove down the street and a cop pulled us over, but listen to some of these guys, tell a story as simple as getting pulled over by a cop. I mean, and then you look at the wrestling. To me, there's just you lose a lot of the humor. You lose a lot of the content when you put it in writing. It's a whole different deal when you hear guys telling a story. And so I mean, I've had guys that are like, hey, what do you know about so and so? And I'm, what do you want to know? Well, did he ever do this? And they're looking for dirt, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to bury nobody and stir up shit with nobody. I mean, that's not, it's not my place, and it's not, like you said, fans look at wrestlers like superheroes, and you know, the last thing I want to hear is Batman's a drug addict or something. I mean, my hero is Bat. You know what I'm saying?
You're right, right, right.
So I'm not
That's
gonna.
that's
But
why.
I know.
For example,
I
me, whenever I ask you a question, and I think people have gotten to know me as I interview them or as I talk to them. I don't like considering this an interview. I like considering this a conversation.
right,
Um, for when I asked you about Mula, it wasn't to try. I think you got that. That's why I said, hey, if you don't feel like talking about it, let's do it. Let's
right.
next. Um, yeah, I'm with you. I don't like when people try and get dirt or trying to bury somebody else. Um, yeah, that's not cool. That's not cool.
Like when you asked me to come on here, I said, yeah, sure, no problem, whatever, whatever. And then I heard a couple of your podcasts and stuff. I don't remember who you're talking to. I didn't get that vibe of this guy is trying to get dirt. This guy is trying to bury somebody. This guy's trying to,
Mm-mm.
there's another guy. I don't know if I
I
can.
appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I mean, there's another guy that he'll call me up and say, hey, you got a couple of minutes? Yeah, sure. His name's Duke, and yeah, sure. And he'll like, I don't have nobody to talk to this week. Can you spend 30 minutes on the phone? Yeah, whatever. And we'll talk about whatever, just to fill time. I mean, I don't mind, doing this stuff. I know, there's people out there that want to hear
stuff, and I'll try and keep it lighthearted. I don't, I could have easily said, yeah, Abdullah the Butcher invited us to his restaurant and he stiffed us on the bill and and bury him. But it's a funny story though
Well, I
because
loved, but you see, that story that you shared was an amazing story. It was hilarious. It was awesome. Those are the kind of stories that I want to hear, and I want to hear more stories. And I know you have a lot of stories.
anytime,
But you
man,
have
just let me
42
know.
years of experience with wrestling. You have a lot of stories.
Anytime, I enjoy it.
So
If you
I,
got a few, if you got a few minutes, I got this girl Sylvia Sanchez from Wow Superheroes. She can talk about her her WoW experiences. I was there in California for this past weekend, and man, let me just real quick, man. Those girls worked their asses off. They did two tapings, Friday and Saturday, and each taping was 28 matches, and they're doing
whoa,
yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. They're doing several TV shows, to save money and what have you, but I mean, the fans are cheering from start to finish. From they start at 5 o'clock to end about 11 o'clock, maybe a little later. But I'm sitting there watching, and I'm interested, and I've been around for years and years, so there's nothing these girls are going to do that can surprise me or where I'm going to say, "Oh wow!" But there I am, "Oh wow," because it's a different product, and like I just said, the girls today, it's women's wrestling is hotter than it's ever been. But and it's a shame because the women back in the day, man, they deserve the same recognition.
yeah.
But it is what it is.
But the good thing is, I as a fan, I remember Rockin' Robin,
Right?
which is obviously Grizzly Smith's daughter,
Yep.
Jake the Snake Roberts' sister, um, uh, and Sam Houston's sister. For those that don't know, that they are related. uh,
Right. Right.
but I remember Rockin' Robin. I remember, like you said, Wendy Richter. I remember Wendy Richter beat Family's Moolah.
I think at WrestleMania, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was, and
So
that was amazing. And I enjoyed that match. And I was not a big fan of, because there are certain women wrestlers that were not good, but those they were. You remember the good ones. You remember the
so
good ones.
so the women, the lady that runs the WoW crew is her name is Selena Majors. Back in
Okay,
the
yeah,
day,
from
back in
from
the
Glow.
right, back in the day, she was Bambi.
Yes.
And when Micah told me, yeah, we the girl that's working with us, her name is Selena Majors, and I was thinking to myself, Bambi, and she says she used to wrestle as Bambi, and I for the longest time I did wonder whatever happened to her. She disappeared. She did. And there she is, coaching the girls on WoW, and then she's doing a good job too. Shout out to Selena Majors.
As a matter of fact, speaking of Glow, I had April Hom, the Royal Hawaiian. I had her twice already.
You know what?
She
I
she was awesome. She was
I
awesome
just
too.
I just met her Friday. She was sitting on the side, and I looked at her. She had a little flower in her hair,
She
and
always has.
yeah, okay, but she looked to me, and I hadn't seen her in a long time, but to me, she looked like Leilani Kai.
She
So
did. She doesn't like her. Yeah.
yes, so I was going to the restroom, and so she was coming back into the building, and we bumped into each other, and I'm like Leilani, and she
No.
said, says, babe, I'm the original Hawaiian princess. And I'm like, oh shit, who the heck?
She's
I said,
always
I
promoting the
go,
women. She's always promoting WoW. She's always promoting the
yep,
women wrestlers. Yeah.
yep. And I go, do you know who Leilani Kai? She goes, I know exactly who Leilani Kai is. She's a wonderful lady. She's a nice human being, yada, yada, yada. I go, I thought you were Leilani Kai. And she goes, I get that a lot, but I'm the original. I'm like, all right, I heard you the first time. She goes, I'm the original. She goes, and she said her name was April. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so she's a very nice person, though. I mean, she went up there and she was enjoying the matches also.
Yeah.
I guess she lives in Los Angeles.
She does. She lives in. Yeah. She lives in Cali. She lives in California. I don't think it is Los Angeles. I forgot exactly where it is, but yeah, but she does live near Los Angeles. I agree. Yeah,
Right.
and she's
But
always traveling around that area for the shows.
she looked just like Leilani Kai.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah. Well, my brother, I'm gonna let you go. I really really appreciate you coming on, and I will definitely be hitting you up again. Uh, I might have you as the last episode of, if you don't mind, the last episode of the season.
The last
Um,
episode that works for me.
of the season. Yeah, I have a few guys lined up. The next few episodes, even if it doesn't have to be episode 50, it could be episode 50 something. Doesn't matter. I will have. I definitely want to wrap up the season with you. With some good stories, and you know. So I really, again, appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Same here.
you have a blessed evening, and folks, please, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you have not seen this man wrestle, check out some of he's on YouTube. He is on YouTube. You'll be able to catch some of his matches, and follow him on Facebook. Um, I'll be sharing some of the links and some of the videos on the description. Um, all right, Rudy. You have a blessed evening, man.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.